Hello and welcome back. This is Sherry with Heart and Soulful. I'm back in the studio today with an update video. And so it's not going to be very long. I wanted to show you how I finished up the last shadow box. If you have just joined my channel for the first time, welcome. I hope you enjoy this video. This is kind of a sneak peek at what I have been working on for the last few weeks. So if you enjoy it, please give me a thumbs up. Click on subscribe and the little bell so you don't miss out on future videos. I will put a link for the video that was just before this one where I showed you how to make shadow boxes. And then I will also have a link down in the description for the entire playlist and all the supplies that I have used in this entire series. So I have been working on a series of making gel prints, how I like to prepare them to make some stripy papers with just some of the scraps. I like to use up every scrap. So I make these fun stripy papers and then use those to create, and the other gel prints, the parts that were not torn off, to create collage, assemblage, just different kind of art, mixed media art and that type of thing. So the last video, like I said, was how to make a shadow box. And when I say make a shadow box, I did them using Reader's Digest books. And so I had shown these two that I didn't do a video making these exact Reader's Digest ones because I had done the video for this one and it was very long and I wanted to shorten it up. So I didn't have another Reader's Digest, but since then I did find some. And so I will be making some more of these with the bright colors and the fun Reader's Digest. So maybe I'll record that when I do it, since I'll have it more kind of fine-tuned now that I've made a few. So this one, I used a vintage book and I wanted to go ahead and show you what I ended up having to do because I had to go to Plan B. And it was having to do with the closure and how it was going to hang on the wall. I didn't finish that in the last video and I had not made the artwork. I'm really happy with how it turned out, so I wanted to share it with you even though I didn't record while I was making it. So first thing, I want to take this out and show you what I did, and then we'll talk about my plan B that I had to do. So in the last video, I did go through and show you and worked with this exact book and made this shadow box out of a vintage book and a vintage piece of glass that is actually curved. And I don't know if you can see that in this because it's actually an old curved piece of glass. I have another one that I can work with because that came out of a little frame that has two. So I'll be able to make something out of this other one. And then I'm going to put some contemporary art that I create into this frame. So I bought a few vintage frames and I'm going to show you at the end also one that I showed in the last video that I was working on. I have it finished now, also using a new piece of art in a vintage frame. I really like collecting things and I really like old things and grungy things, but I also really like bright colors, and I'm just new to abstract art and creating collage and that sort of thing. So I wanted to be able to find a way to combine all of my loves into maybe pieces of art. So that's kind of what these are. These are more with the bright colors, but they're, using the gel prints and then vintage found objects to showcase in these. So that's kind of my plan for what I'm working on at the moment. Having found some books and things hunting for the Reader's Digest books, it does have the bug for me to go finish up the journals that I was working on before I started this whole gel print series. So I'm getting close. I've done quite a few projects with the gel prints and I'm going to continue to do that. But I really kind of want to go back and finish up some things that with some slow stitch spine covers. If you've been following me, I do a lot of things. So I'm kind of ready now to kind of take a break and bounce back. So in the meantime, I want to show you what I did with this one. It was the American history book. So it has a Native American theme to this. And I really am happy with how this turned out. And I had mentioned that I had a serendipitous thing happen when I cut one of the pages out of this book, and I still have the original. I was afraid of messing it up. I didn't want to try my idea and then have it not work, and then I wouldn't have this anymore. But when I was cutting out the front pages that created the space for the glass, this was one of the pages that I cut out, and I really loved how it looked like the boy's hand is reaching up to the silhouette. And the interesting thing about this is when I found the page in the book, he was reaching up to, and there was an eagle. And so I just love that. If you know me at all and you've been following me, I collect lots of things, including feathers that I find on my hikes. I just really love all those natural elements and collecting the vintage things. So when I did this book, I was wishing that I had like an arrowhead or something like that I could put in my shadow box. But I thought, you know what, I have feathers, so let me go and look and see what I have. So that kind of got me going on what I wanted to do for the collage. The other thing is I didn't want it to be too literal. I didn't want to just cut this out and have it be part of my collage. I wanted to do some sort of transfer work with it into the final piece. So I just made a photocopy with my inkjet printer, and I know the color's not, is much more vibrant, which I didn't really mind because I thought, well, I'm going to maybe be, combining it with some of my gel prints, which are all also brightly colored. And so I thought if I end up leaving it this bright, that would be okay too. So I wasn't too upset about that. But then I thought I want to try some sort of transfer method that makes it sort of not ethereal looking, but kind of see-through, where I would see through layers. So I ended up, if you've never done this, super easy, is I cut just one of these out. And actually I'll show you and do that. Just maybe I'll do one kind of quick here, and that way you can see. So you just cut out the image. I'm going to get the white off so that it's already off. Okay, so you want to take your piece, and because it's inkjet on this, I didn't want it to smear. And so just in case, you want to spray it with something like a Camar varnish or a workable fixative or something like that. If you don't want to spray it first, then you can take a gel plate and you just put some of your matte medium on the gel plate and lay this face down. You want it on the front so that you have a layer of the matte gel on the front. And then you let that dry. Now you can use a paintbrush and go over it. So you want to do several layers of matte gel on the front. And then once those are dry, you just turn it over. And then I just used a wet paintbrush and got the back wet. And then with your fingers, you can take away the paper. And you're left with the matte gel with this image transferred on it. So that's what I did. And it's super easy to do. And it just gives you that sort of, as if maybe I had copied this onto vellum or tissue paper or something like that. So I had this kind of a skin of matte gel with my image. So then I went to layering, and I just grabbed out of my big bin some different gel prints that I thought the colors would look nice with this picture, just to kind of get a palette going. And then once I had that, I also grabbed some pieces of my stripy paper scraps. So I have this little bin here where I keep, just little pieces, and these are just on the thin rice paper, but they have all my mark making on them. And most of these, because I've used them in larger projects, have already been sprayed with a fixative, so I won't ruin my pen work. So I went through my scraps, and I found a piece that I really loved. This piece, I thought it looked very Native American because of the colors and the mark making that I had done. So I knew I wanted to use, that was the piece. It actually, I have a similar size. I didn't really cut it down. This was from the other side of a different piece, but you can kind of tell. I try not to have to cut away too much because then I'll just have more scraps. So it was a nice size. So I used it the way that it was. And then I had another little piece that has kind of a southwestern looking pattern on it. These were made with my own stencils that I have made. So those two gel prints, and then I have, these are gel prints back here. This one was done with some plants that I actually did this one while I was in Utah, but I did it with, earthier colors, and just went out in the yard and grabbed some plants, and I'm not even sure what it was, some kind of sage, maybe some wild stuff. We're out where there's a lot of just native plants, and created that kind of look. And then I knew that I wanted to use some kind of focal point that was dimensional. So I found this feather that has this beautiful orange shank on it. And then these are two other different feathers. So I just layered them, wrapped them in a little bit of leather, added some beads that aren't that are just kind of dangly. The really fun thing that I found, and I tend to do this, is when I want to do a collage from a book, I like to use parts from the book in the collage. So obviously I used this picture, but then I wanted to find some text since he was, this transfer was so translucent. You can even see this paper that I put, you can see that behind, and I liked adding that little bit of, you know, black around. But I wanted behind the main part of the photo, I wanted some text. So I went through, just grabbed some of those little scraps I had cut out, and I found one that said, "Gift from the Great Spirit." The next line, it says, "Honey in their nest." And then down here, it says birds, and then I think I've covered up maybe where it said feathers. So it was all meaningful to me, and it looked, you know, he was reaching up to an eagle. But then if you study at all Native American culture and that sort of thing, that there are meanings and spiritual meanings to feathers. And so they're gifts from the spirit world. And so I thought it was just a perfect sort of a metaphor for how I was feeling about this whole book and him reaching down. So it's like he's reaching up to the spirit world and then the feathers. So I'm really happy with how that turned out. It's going to be, I think, one of my favorite things that means something to me. Maybe no one else would know that, you know, if they just looked at it. I don't know how they would interpret it. So let me know what you think in the comments. Now, my plan B is if you watched the video where I did this, I had been using magnets to close the books, and they've worked in these. They hold, and even with the hanger on the back, I've hung these on the wall as a test. And because the construction of the book is very sturdy, they don't fall open even with the weight they are, because they're just nice and sturdy. So for the Reader's Digest or any newer book, I think the magnets work fine. For this one, because it's an old book, its spine is a little wonky. It's not as sturdy. So one thing you could do is, if there's a way you can sturdy up before you do the whole thing, you know, that would be optimal. In my case, I went ahead and built the whole thing, had the magnets in, and then went to put a hanger. And in this case, I decided, because I'm going to, you know, this is going in my studio, that I just liked the leather on it. You know, it doesn't show anyway, but I just like that look. So I went ahead and did this type of hanger. So when I went to hang it on the wall, it fell open because this is, you can see it just kind of loosey-goosey. So I needed something that would actually attach this better to the whole front. So I ended up, I already had the magnets on. I was able to just kind of pull them off of here and dig it out of that little recess that I had made, and go ahead and make a hole through. I just drilled a hole, and then I made this little leather button out of it, just a scrap of leather that I had. It was pretty soft leather, so I wanted to harden it up just a little bit. And so I just used some glue on the back and let that dry, and then just made a couple holes, put some wax thread, and then I just tied a whole bunch of knots so that it won't go back through, and glued that in. So now I just need to put my artwork. So I did test it. This is just a piece of elastic that I attached using an eyelet. And to do that, if you've never done that, you put the ends of your ribbon or whatever you're using through the hole, and then put the eyelet through and let it come off to the side, and it just sort of captures that. So that's how I attach that. And then it's elastic, so I can just get it around. And that way it keeps my book closed, so that when I hang it on the wall, and I've tested it, it did work. So that's a plan B. So sometimes you do something, and I like to share when things don't always work out, because you need to come up with something else. So I'm going to go ahead. This is finished now, and I've shown it. So I can go ahead and attach this in, and I'm going to use my Line Co. This is just some hinge tape, and I'm just going to use a piece of this and attach. This is archival, so it won't damage your artwork, and you can just peel that back so it's just very thin. And there's other ways to hinge, but I'm just going to do this all across the top so that I know it's in here, and I didn't make that quite long enough, but, and you can go around the sides, but it's just, you know, a way to kind of hold that piece in. And I like to then maybe cover this, especially now that it's not a magnet. I'll cover this with a piece of paper and glue that in just around the edges, just to give it kind of a nice finished look. And then I always put my little label so I remember when I made it. And I titled this one Gift from the Great Spirit, because that's what it said there. So that is just my finished thing. I hope you like that, and let me know what you think, if that's something that you'd like to try with an old book. Like I said, I did find some more Reader's Digest, so I'm going to work on some of those. Now, if you did watch the last video, I shared the things I found in the antique store, and one of them was this larger frame, which the glass will work for a larger book. And so I went ahead and robbed the glass out of that. And this was just a piece that I had made just playing around. If you've ever watched it, this is nothing compared to her work, but Anna Falsetta, I'm not going to say her name correctly, but she does beautiful work with watercolor and painting, you know, mark making, and then doing stitching. And I love doing stitching, so I wanted to do some of that and just see what I came up with. It was larger and I didn't really like it, so I cropped it down to fit in this. And now I do like it because I really like it with this frame. These were some gel prints that I had made, again, with some stencils and different layers. And there's just some of these sort of metallic colors that are kind of like the frame. So I really like that. And it doesn't have glass, so I finished it in a way that I actually got the idea from someone else. And when I do a demonstration of this, I will look it up and see, because I'm not remembering her name right off the top of my head. But she came up with a formula for a faux encaustic look. And so I wanted to try it on a few things just for fun. It kind of takes away the texture of the stitching, you know, and it makes it almost not sure that that's what that is. Let's see if I can get focus in here. But it makes it all nice and protected, so it's sort of encased, you know, like an encaustic, and you can dust this off then. It's nice because you can tell it has a finished look, but it's not too shiny, so when you hang it on the wall, it doesn't have a lot of glare. So I really kind of like using this finish on this. So I think at one point I've had a few people ask some different finishing ideas, and I do different ones depending on what I'm making. So I thought maybe I would do a standalone video if you think you'd be interested in seeing something where I kind of show some of the different ways I like to finish that I've been learning about. So I have this finished and ready to go. I have it in there, and I went ahead and put a piece of paper to make it all look pretty, and put a hanger on the back. So now it's just a nice little piece that I will enjoy this hanging in my studio, because even though it's a very beginner look, it's a reminder to me of me trying things and including a different color palette that I'm used to, not doing things so pastel. So that's my 2 shares for today. I hope that you were inspired to, you know, either make the shadow box or try doing your new art in an antique frame. So have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.